Live from New York, it's Ask an Engineer.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Ask Engineer. It's me, Lady Ada, the engineer. With me, Mr. Lady Ada on camera control, broadcasting live from downtown Manhattan. That's where the Adafruit factory is. That's where we do all of our kitting and selling and videoing and coding, manufacturing, and more. It happens here in the big city. But for the next 45-ish minutes to an hour, we're going to be going with you through the happenings of the week, what projects we've published, and tutorials and videos, newsletters and more. Got some new products and it's not out yet, INPI, and discount codes and more. Speaking of, you want to tell them what the discount code is and get
That's
the code in?
right. On tonight's show, the code is splits up. You'll see why as we get to our new products later on in the show. 10% off in the Adafruit store all the way up to 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. Talk about some of our live shows, including a highlight from JP's product pick of the week. We'll do some Adafruit Daily Python and microcontrollers. We'll talk about some open source hardware from our learn.adafruit.com destination where we put our guides and hardware and code and more. Some New York City factory footage, some 3D printing videos from Juan Pedro. We got INPI this week. It is ST. It's brought to you by DigiKey. We've got a couple top secrets. We've got some new products. We answer your questions. We do that on Discord. Adafruit.it/discord, discord.gg/Adafruit. All that and more on, you guessed it, Ask an Engineer. So
Yeah.
let's do the code. It's splits up. People will see why later on in the show.
Yeah.
I can't give it away quite yet. You'll guess it probably has something to do with a new product. And then they get free stuff. So when you add stuff to your card, USA only at this time, what do you get?
Okay. $99 or more when you order from the Adafruit.com shop will give you a free PCB coaster. It's beautiful Adafruit logo on it in gold on black. Get some bumpers. 149 or more will give you a KB2040 Pro Micro pinout compatible microcontroller board with the RP2040 chip. It's got 4 megabytes of flash, QT, NeoPixel, USB-C, and buttons. So it's a great getting started with microcontroller, not just for keyboards. 199 or more, you get free UPS ground shipping in the continental United States. And we still have our 299 freebie Circuit Playground Express, our favorite all-in-one development board with buttons and sensors and LEDs, NeoPixels, and more. You don't need to do any soldering to get started with doing hardware electronic projects. Just plug it in. You can get started with Arduino or CircuitPython, MicroPython, code.org, CS Discoveries, Make Code, and more.
All right, we do a bunch of live shows. We just did the show Untitled at 7:30 p.m. every single week on Wednesdays. We had Scott stop by, Alyssa, Jeff, Brent, Noe, and they showed a bunch of cool projects. I think if you were interested in some cutting edge IoT stuff, check out Brent's project with Whippersnapper and Raspberry Pi and like some IoT stuff. You can also see some of our behind the scene tools and how we do stuff and more. And then we'll be showing the 3D printing video, but if you want to see the latest project from Pedro, you can check it out. It's a cool little soundbox.
Yeah.
Like Melissa has this cool like web-based IDE type thing where you can plug in your microcontrollers, and Scott was working on some BLE. And then Jeff talked about some HTTPS, some secure stuff, so we can kind of continue to add more things to this streaming music player, I guess, is one of the things you can do. But there's a lot that goes into it.
We wanted to add MP3 to ESP32. We did that, and then I was like, you know what? Let's try streaming Wi-Fi MP3s. Because it would be cool to make a little Wi-Fi radio project.
Yeah, so you can check out the latest with that. On Sundays, we do From the Desk of Lady Ada, including The Great Search, where Lady Ada uses her power of engineering to find things on digikey.com. And then on Tuesdays, we do JP's product pick of the week. Here is this week's highlight.
My product pick of the week this week, it is the Gemma M0, everyone's favorite little round microcontroller board, everyone's. You can run Arduino on it, you can run CircuitPython on it, and you can use Make Code, simulation of the board with the code that it's running. So you can see right now I have essentially capacitive touch running. If I hit D0, my dot star goes red. If I hit D1, dot star goes green. If I hit D2, dot star goes blue. And I've essentially duplicated this one block, which is found here, input on touch D0 click. So I drag that out there. And then I modified it in this case to say on down. So when I touch it, or on up, when I release it, it does different things. It goes red. And I have on release, they all go to yellow. So there we go to green and back to yellow and blue and back to yellow. Is my product pick of the week this week. It is the Gemma M0.
And JP's workshop is tomorrow, then Friday, deep dive with Tim. If it's not Scott this week, so it's probably gonna be Tim. Let's do some Python on hardware. This is from our newsletter, Adafruit Daily, where you can go to adafruitdaily.com, completely separate website. You can subscribe there. Python microcontrollers, you can get it at RSS, you can get it as an email, you can blog posts, you can get it on GitHub. But this week, let's take a look at what's going on. So we'll have this in the store soon. This is Raspberry Pi's new $70 AI kit.
Yeah, it's basically
A whole bunch of Python in it. Oh, what would it be?
got up early. Yeah, so this is interesting. It's like if you're interested in doing TensorFlow Lite, or just playing TensorFlow on a microcontroller, or if you want to start like doing LLM programming and implementations, having an AI coprocessor will really help. I mean, it'll basically make your simple Raspberry Pi computer as good as having like a GPU core from NVIDIA. And with the PCIe hat, it's got a really fast interface. So before, people would use USB sticks. This is going to be much faster. So I think it'll be interesting for people doing, on the edge, not internet connected Raspberry Pi AI projects, especially if they're getting sensor data or vision data and doing on the fly analysis without having to go up and use like OpenAI or ChatGPT or any of the other online
There's
services.
Pi 5 availability now, so if you're kind of waiting, I guess as soon as these are out, we'll probably see people doing comparisons with the NVIDIA Jetson, and then
Jetson,
Google Coral, and then Raspberry Pi. Like each has its own offering, and then you get to like computers and clusters, and Apple just had their big Apple Intelligence.
It's all about AI.
Yeah, there's a lot, and I think we're just at the very beginning of people being able to poke at it themselves, at least on something like Raspberry Pi. So we'll see. Next up, you can check out a review. This is from Jeff. This is the AI kit, and comparisons have begun. Is it better than Google Coral? Here is a really neat key map flashing utility. If you want,
and that was cool because it's for KMK. So it's like if you're wanting to use, people use QMK, which is like the embed, I think, based keyboard editor, but KMK for CircuitPython is also really good, and it's like fun to configure. And of course, you can easily update the firmware to add more capabilities and functions if you want to add rotary encoders or OLEDs or TFTs or whatever. So I love that there's now a key map editor that makes it fast to use with KMK.
All right, there's new MicroPython in browser.
This is
IDE.
this is not the one Melissa's working on, but it's great to see more editors. This one uses WebUSB and Web Serial, which is definitely the way to go. I remember when Web Serial was like still like a cutting edge thing in Chromium, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. This has really solved the problem of like how do you get people on Chrome OS or on like a lockdown PC access to the COM ports where you can do a lot of microcontroller stuff. Well, this is the answer.
There's PyCon 2024 recap.
Videos are not up yet.
Yeah, just videos not up yet, but once it is, we will let you know. There's some richer programming in Python. This is a really neat YouTube video you can check out. Kevin translates some of the 80s retro games into MicroPython, runs them on a microcontroller. There is Raspberry Pi teaming up with Dolphin Design. It's part of TSMC for some low power chips. And then I guess just noting, there's been a lot of Raspberry Pi news, of course, because Raspberry Pi went public. I think we had a blurb here somewhere.
Yeah, they finally went on the London market.
Yeah.
So that on Friday, I think people can independently invest. If you want to not just own a Raspberry Pi, but own some Raspberry Pi stock.
Here's PyCharm with CircuitPython on Mac, so a little bit of setup. And then I think we had a note here for Raspberry Pi being public, and if there is, I shall click it. We're very past it here. Oh, here it is. Yeah. So this is from Yahoo Finance. Let's see if it's been updated. So it topped out. So instead of it going available, and then stock plunge. This is a good success story. I read about it because in the U.S., the finance market, of course, is very focused on the New York Stock Exchange and the Nasdaq. But this is a little different because London needed some successful IPOs, and that's what you keep hearing is like this is a specifically tuned um, offering, and obviously Raspberry Pi is okay. So even in this article, it's like the small deal is still this deal is still a relief for London, which has fallen behind in this year's IPO revival in Europe. So they're hoping it kind of has some new life in the financial district hub area, which is London, which is known for. So they were working on this all the way since 2022. It's been going on for a while. They Raspberry Pi that has raised money from ARM, Sony. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, once you raise some money, it's obvious. It's like
you gotta go somewhere.
We gotta go somewhere.
So we'll see what happens. The money that was raised, they're gonna you can read on raspberrypi.org, and you can read from different people, from Eben to their CEO, Philip, about what they're going to do with the funds. They're going to invest in new hardware, new offerings. So we'll see. You can check the financial information if you're into that, and sleuth around and see what Raspberry Pi might be doing this year. You can look at their filings and their offerings. That's a lot of fun. So we'll cover it. So far, so good. Congrats to everyone at the Raspberry Pi team.
It's good. It's got legs.
Yeah, this is part of their story. So other good thing, of course, is when you're doing this, you want to get a lot of news out. So you probably see a lot of news announcements and more.
It's very common as the IPO, they had to have a quiet period, but now now that it's happening, they can start
talk about a lot of stuff.
Talking about stuff. So there'll probably be, I have no knowledge of, but usually this is when they're going to do a lot of announcements and pre-releases. And like you see, like the AI hat came out. And they've been getting more product into the market. So we have we're actually fully stocked on all Raspberry Pi variants right now.
Okay. And this is once again the newsletter that's delivered every single week. Python on hardware. Let's go to some open source hardware news and more, which means it's time to visit our Learn system. Learn.adafruit.com, 3,000 plus guides. What's on the big board this week, Lady Ada?
Okay, we have a lot of guides this week. Okay, so from the right, we've got the new Knowing Pedro project, the Soundbox RP2040 with our prop maker feather, a rebuild of an older project, but now easier and better sounding than ever, and faster to build, more configurable. Liz made this awesome Y-Box 3s. This is kind of like the next gen after we had the Y-Box and Y-Box 2 back in like 2006. But now we can do it all on a Raspberry Pi with DVI output. So also bringing it from composite to the digital world. But I was like, oh, maybe make something teletext-like. And I think she did a good job. And also you can use a remote control to change the channels, which is fun. It doesn't run on a Pico. Maybe it does run on a Pico W. Yeah, sorry, it does run on Pico W because it gets the weather from Open Weather, but it only runs an Arduino because to use the gigantic color buffer and to get Wi-Fi data going, you can't have CircuitPython running. So it's an Arduino for now. Maybe in the future we'll figure out a way to get it working on CircuitPython. We have a basic starter guide for the It's a Snap app that just got published. It's our iOS app that lets you do quick interaction with a single feed on Whippersnapper. It's our way of basically getting Adafruit IO, or sorry, it's not just Whippersnapper, it's Adafruit IO feeds, which can also be Whippersnapper, and getting them kind of integrated into the iOS system. And then Liz also did a guide for last week's new product, the CH9328, which is a UART to HID converter. So you can add HID keyboard emulation to boards like Arduino Uno, ESP32, or 8066, or the trying to think of other, the CH552 or whatever, chips that basically don't have native USB, that use a USB serial converter to program them, or they don't have enough endpoints for HID keyboard, you can now have the MacBook keyboard.
All right. So that's everything on the big board this week. And then also don't forget to check out Playground, where you can see guides from the community. So there's Hidden Clock. This is ESP32C3. This is Broken Motion, replace a PIR detector lens. Here's a instrumentation vibe for display I/O. Here's how to run 2 programs, single started Python device. And then there's this plain text MIDI sequencer for a SAMD. So check these out. You can post these on your own. You get a chance to play around with our learning system. And we feature these. We have a little thing that's been on the show and tell, and all the different things you can do to share some of your projects. It doesn't require anyone to log in to view all the steps. We don't do ads. We don't do weirdo tracking.
It looks the same with or without an ad blocker.
Yeah, we're really into protecting your privacy. So this
We don't
is
even have a cookie thing.
no cookie
Can't do
thing.
cookies.
Yep. So check it out. That's adafruit-playgrounds.com, or you can just go to learn.adafruit.com and you'll see a little playground button there. And you can check it out. Also, you know what? Fun little feature, by the way, if you're ever in guides, press the little dice button. It'll just show you a random, guide, because we have so many guides.
Yeah.
So
We're
whippersnapper,
going to see new things. Get
cricket,
inspiration.
all that stuff. Cool, cool, cool. Okay, let's do some factory footage. And that's factory footage. Next up, we're going to do some 3D printing with Noah and Pedro. We're going to show the sound box, and then we're going to do a speed up. We're going to play those back to back.
You can build a fun soundbox project using CircuitPython and Adafruit's PropMaker Feather RP2040. We redesigned this project to work with the all-in-one PropMaker Feather, so it's much easier to build. Embedded inside the arcade button is a NeoPixel strip that lights up when it's pressed. This features a big arcade button that plays different sound effects each time it's pressed.
Yellow.
Each audio file features a color in the file name that corresponds with the NeoPixels, so you can easily choose a different color for each sound.
Orange.
You can also shake the device to trigger a different set of sound effects. We've been on a tear lately remaking past projects with the PropMaker Feather RP2040 because it's packed with these features. Our 3D printed case snap fits together and features these print in place handles that make it fun to pick up and lug around. The PropMaker can be configured to run off of alkaline or rechargeable AA batteries, so it's a safe, kiddo-friendly project. The CircuitPython code features a set of adjustable colors that can be assigned to an audio file by associating it in the file name. In the loop, whenever the button is pressed, it randomly plays an audio file that's stored on the device. Using the built-in accelerometer, it'll detect whenever it's been shaken, so it'll trigger audio files with the corresponding file name. We think this is a fun and novel way to make audio projects that promotes learning colors for those young makers. We hope this inspires you to check out CircuitPython and Adafruit's PropMaker Feather RP2040 for your next project.
Alrighty, don't forget, code is splits up. Get all this free stuff and more. USA only this time. Let's go to the NPI.
On NPI.
Eye on NPI brought to you by DigiKey. Thanks, DigiKey. It is ST This Weekly Data. What is the new product introduction of the week this week?
Okay, this week's new product NPI introduction is the LSM6DSV 32X, which I'm just going to call the LSM6DS because that's like the family of chips. This is a new 6-axis IMU, triple axis accelerometer, triple axis gyroscope, up to 32G, that's the 32 at the end for accelerometer, up to 4,000 degrees per second on the gyro. It's got all sorts of cool extras, like it has I2C as well as I3C. We're seeing a lot more I3C devices lately. You can check out, we did an INPI about I3C where we covered a like a level shifter or something for it. But we also covered like the ups and downs of ICCC. I don't know. We'll see. I3C. But there's some really neat extras built into this LSM6DS sensor, which caught our eye because we've been a fan of the LSM6DS series for a while. We stocked a breakout for the 6 DS33, which was then supplanted by the DS3, which is a great low cost 6-DoF sensor. We stock it in the shop. It's, really good for general purpose IMU projects. There's also the LSM 6DSOX. The X, I think, is what stands for like the machine learning core, but the DSO is a very high quality version of the 6DS sensor series. It's got extremely good accelerometer and gyroscope performance. We also have the ISM 330, which is even better and has more, the specifications are even more tightly defined. And what's nice about all these is they pretty much have the exact same pinout. For I2C and SPI and the auxiliary I2C and the power and pins. And the interrupt, yes. This also has 2 QR pins, which we'll chat about. But for the most part, if you've been using the LSM6DS series in one of your projects or products, you can just like swap this one in. There's slight firmware changes, but the package is the same. So the specs for this, the stuff that I always look at is the angular rate zero rate level, basically, how good is the gyroscope, how noisy is it, and the accelerometer, because especially if you're using these as to do fusion to get orientation data out of, the gyroscope is what really defines how good your orientation math is going to be, because the drift comes from the gyroscope, especially if you have no magnetometer to do overall drift correction. Plus or minus 1 DPS is pretty good. I think like the ISM 330 has like a half DPS, but this is very good. Again, you could definitely use this for an IMU, no problem. It's much better than gyroscopes from a few years ago. We have a guide about how to calibrate and determine the drift and how to calculate the offset, calibrate. There's an offset register in the LSM series, and so once you figure out what the uncalibrated gyro offsets are, and accelerometer offsets are, you can program them in your firmware, and then you get it automatically zeroed, so you can use it. So that way, when you do filtering on it, it's already normalized, calibrated, and then filtered. So check out that guide if you want. It'll work with any of the LSM6DS series, and definitely that's something you want to do if you want to use it for fusion orientation data. Good quality. Basically, it's very similar to the existing LSM6DS series, but what I really like is the new embedded functions. So some functions that are familiar are like the tilt and pedometer step counter. So tilt calculation, basically it can tell when something's moved from like portrait to landscape mode. The pedometer is great for step counting and like everyday motion detection. We've done a couple of pedometer projects with like the Clue, which used again the LSM 60S 3 CTR, I think is the variant. But the pedometer works really great. So that because it's an X series, it's got this cool machine learning core. I'll say machine learning is a little bit of a not like a misnomer, but it's not a like TensorFlow Life microcontroller style. You make a model from getting a lot of information, and then that model is like automatically generates different classifications. Instead, what you actually do is you use their tool and you would program in the different levels and heuristics you want, and then like an if then else table, and then the decision tree is what will classify the motion. So if you want to say have a classification called like at rest or running or walking or laying down or in a car, those are the kinds of things that or like free falling, that's what the machine learning core would be good for. So it doesn't replace something like you know TensorFlow Life for microcontrollers, or Goliath or whatever, like the smart AI IoT services. It's on chip. It's very low power, but it's a little simpler. Another thing that was kind of interesting is I've seen QVAR show up in a couple different ST sensors. So accelerometers, it's like pressure sensors have it. Um, I think they might. I don't think they actually have a separate QVAR chip, but it's kind of like it's a little similar to capacitive sensing, but it's called electrostatic sensing. And what's nice about that is it can detect like electrostatic objects, which means it has better proximity sensing than just plain capacitive sensing. Um, there's 2 pins available. You can use it for capacitive touch sensing or like proximity, but also has like a radar mode. You can detect when like a gigantic body of salty water, like a human, is nearby. So this can be used like if you're making a wearable, it detect when it's touching, when it's being picked up, there's a hand holding it, or it's in an ear, or it's clipped next to the body. The eval board for this chip, which I picked up, has these little QVAR add-on like electrodes. So the first one's just plain touch. The second one you can do up or down, because there's 2 electrodes, so you can swipe between them. And the third one is the quote unquote radar mode. So it detects when there's proximity, when the hand or a body is nearby, but doesn't necessarily have to be touching it. Okay, but the most interesting thing that we saw in the data sheet, the new built-in functionalities, is the fusion mode. So normally when you do sensor fusion, you have to get the accelerometer gyro data and then maybe magnetometer data. You put it through a Kalman filter, magic, whatever, and then out pops a quaternion. But one of the things that's a little annoying is you have to constantly be getting the data from these sensors. Like you can FIFO them, but you still have to get all that data and you have to process it on a regular basis, because you can't miss any gyro movements or sonar movements, or your drift is going to get worse and worse. What I thought was neat is that this sensor, the in the LSM6DSV, is the fusion part, which you can tell it to use the built-in offsets and filtering, and then it'll give you quaternion game rotation vector output. It's not going to be as good again as if you did have a magnetometer, but you don't have to do it on chip. Sorry, you don't have to do it off chip on the microcontroller. It's done on the sensor itself, which means it's much lower power. And for some basic motion, if you just want to know like how something twisted, or is it upside down, which way it's pointing, you don't care about having like absolute orientation vector. Definitely going to be cheaper and easier than doing it on your microcontroller, for sure, and frees you up to have the microcontroller to go into a deep sleep mode. I think the Sense Fusion is like, only a couple microamperes. There is a library available on GitHub from ST Microelectronics, including a demo for getting again, the quaternions out of the rotation vector quaternions out of the sensor, just by turning on the sensor fusion. It's really easy. It's just like, it's kind of just all built in. It's quite nice. So I definitely want to check this out, because we do have sensors that have fusion, but they're not nearly as cheap, not nearly as small, not nearly as low power. So definitely this could be a good upgrade for folks, especially if you already are using an LSM60S sensor. This is a nice update, available both 16G and 32G. Both are in stock,
Global DigiGate.
available at DigiKey.
All right,
What
that's
is
this week's INPI new product introduction. See you next week. Okay, before we get into new products, code is splits up. Use it or lose it tonight. 10% off in the Adafruit store. All things we have in stock. Let's do new products.
New, 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 new.
All right,
It's
what's up?
new. Okay, first up, we've got from M5 Stack, the M5 dial, which I really dig. This is an ESP32 S3 based touchscreen rotary encoder all-in-one module for a great price. Know a lot of people wanted to build or use something like this. Traditionally, something this would be a couple $100, but it's now like $35 is a really good price. And like I said, ESP32 S3, it's got the USB port. It's got like an I2C port or two, Grove analog, maybe input, I2C input ports. You can use your Grove to stem a QT adapter cable and add sensors. And as you can see here, there's a couple different modes. There's also a selection, and there's also a touch screen. Maybe I'll hold on, yeah, maybe on the overhead I'll quickly demo this up. Can we
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, there's so much demo going on here. Okay, so that's a bummer, that image was way better. Okay, so you can change the color, and then this is the touch screen demo. So you can see this is a capacitive touch screen, but you can also rotate it. It has like, I don't know, like 12 ticks per rotation. There's a beeper built in. Oh man, this is so bright. It's a very nice bright screen, but it's an IPS screen as well. And then, you can do a Wi-Fi scan. White is very white. There you go. I don't know, hard to see, but yeah, it's doing a Wi-Fi scan here. But like the temperature mode, let's see if that is nice and visible. Yeah, this is nice and visible. This is a demo showing. I think this is using LVGL, by the way, if you're wondering like what's the graphical user interface. It would be cool if somebody wanted to add a board definition for CircuitPython for this. Definitely CircuitPython could run on this device. I'm assuming it has PSRAM. That would definitely help. And then you could have like a cool all-in-one dial. It's really nicely built, and then you can easily mount it onto any enclosure.
Alrighty, next up.
Okay, next up, it's just actually a revision, but I gave them new product IDs. These are 12-volt LED strips that are like, it's basically what you expect EL wire to look like, but finally it looks good. It's like very smooth color, very high density LEDs. Give them 9 or 12 volts, and you've got this bright light. You can PWM the whole thing, but it's not individually addressable. We do have a separate NeoPixel like version of this LED strip, but of course it's a lot more expensive. We just want a single color. We now have them green and blue, and then we'll get the rest of the colors in. We used to carry these in 352 LEDs per pixel. Now it's just 480. It's just more pixels.
Next up.
Next up, this is a little board. People ask like, oh, I want a mountable NeoPixel that has a plug, like something that I don't have to solder to, that I can, easily detach if needed. This is basically a NeoPixel on one side and 2 JST PH connectors. They're very small connector. Like basically I wanted the smallest connector, so it wasn't a gigantic chunky board. It's not going to be nearly as cheap as just those LED buttons that have no connectors. The double-sided PCB and the connectors are a little pricey. But if you want something that has no soldering, that's just plug in, we have JST SH cables that you can connect up. And then you've got like a single NeoPixel that's easily plug-inable So, an option for those who need something like this. If you don't need the pluggable capabilities, you don't need the mounting holes, our NeoPixel button boards are much less expensive.
All right, and star of the show tonight, besides Yuli Data and our customers, our team, the entire community out there is dun, 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 dun.
The DS2484. This is an I2C to one wire converter. By request, somebody emailed and said, "Hey, could you make a breakout for this?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, it's actually had been on my list, the DS2842, but or 2482, but the 2484 is actually a little bit better. This is kind of the latest version of the adapter. So a lot of microcontrollers and even Raspberry Pis have one wire built into the kernel, or they can bit bang it, but there are still a lot of microcontrollers or boards that may not have one wire, especially if you want to connect safe to your desktop computer using something like an MCP 2221 or an FT232H. So you've added a I2C connector, but now you want to add one wire capability. So this is a chip that basically over I2C you can give it the commands to talk to, search for, and communicate with one wire chips. So in reality, there are multiple one wire sensors and chips and EEPROMs, but in reality, it's DS18B20s, temperature sensors. So if you have a terminal block, you can connect as many as you want. The power that you can have active power, you can use. There's a built-in power pull-up that's on this chip that can activate or deactivate. So you can also use two wire when there's the parasitic power on the data line for the DS18B20s. And it works great. If you have I2C, basically you can add one wire. And we wrote a really quick demo just showing how to search for and display all the temperature sensors. It finds, is it possible to zoom in? You can see the
Yeah, I can zoom in.
ROM, because I can also show on the overhead, but
What, like this?
yeah. So it prints out this demo, which is in the library, prints out the ROM IDs and then the temperatures. You can see the temperatures like 22 degrees. Still chilly where it was at. But it works great. And like I said, if you have a device that does not have one wire and you want to use one wire sensors, or one wire is interfering with some other timing thing, let this I2C chip do it for you. And it's demo QT, so you just plug and play, no soldering required. New.
Okay, don't forget the code is splits up. Free stuff
What's this
USA. Because it in the product description it says it splits up the something something.
Okay,
So it splits up. So it's a short one that's easy for.
that's fine.
Yeah.
I think it's cool.
Yeah, it works. Plus, we've been doing the show for like 15 plus years, so I've defined words that we haven't used before.
We can't use one wire. We used it before.
Used that before.
Yeah.
So we're going to do top secret, then we're going to do questions. Post your questions over on Discord. I have a few stored up, and then we'll get your questions and then get out of here. But first, let's do some top secret.
What's in the vault?
Two things this week. What's this?
Okay, first up, Carter and I are working on the soil sensor V2 or V3, I guess. We want to do a better soil sensor that is I2C using Seesaw. We did one with the at SAMD10, but it used like the built-in capacitive sensing of the SAMD10 chip. But we wanted to update it, so we did a revision that used an RC timing, so like a low cost soil sensor. That worked okay, but I had a couple like weird effects, and so we decided to take another look. And this one is a square wave filter instead. So instead of using a very slow square wave and measuring the rise and fall time delay caused by the capacitance of the soil, this one has a high frequency square wave, high frequency 8 megahertz or 10 megahertz. Or so, and then uses the capacitance and a resistor, which is adjustable. The potentiometer is our adjustable resistor while we tune it, and uses that to filter the peak to peak of the square wave, and we're using that to determine the capacitance of the soil. So we'll try this next.
Next up.
And then I made a little IRDA adapter. This is something that can send or receive IRDA UART data to the UART codec and the optical transceiver, the TFBS. So paired together, you should be able to put two of these next to each other and send 115 kilobit data on the TX, and it'll just show up on the RX on the other side without needing like any RF.
That is top secret.
Yep.
Okay, we've got some questions stored up. We're gonna go to
Okay.
them right now and then get you out of here.
Let's do it.
All right, the questions. Here we go. Is there any prospect of CircuitPython in the M5 dial?
I believe someone can add support for it. Submit a PR and we'd love to see it. I don't think I'm going to have time. I have a baby, but somebody else could do it.
Okay. Notice new NeoPixel breakout uses 1mm JST. Any prospect of GST to JST jumpers to daisy chain them? Would like to see a 0.5 inch, maybe a 6 inch length. Also, maybe 1mm JST direct to 2mm JST.
Yes, I'll probably have some cables now that I've got products that could actually use them.
Okay. Next up is the M5 thing. I think they're asking, is it IP6V? Isn't that a weather water thing? Because it looks
You
like
know,
looks like it's housed in some type of like
I actually don't know if it's got gaskets. You're gonna have to contact M5 Stack. I don't see any.
I don't think so.
I don't see any IP rating. It's for indoor use only.
Yeah, I think they would, based on how they do their marketing, there's like a million little like logos and things of all things. Does I think if they
Yeah.
did it, it would be on here.
I think so too.
Okay.
It's probably not.
Well, the new Adafruit app, it's a snappy updated some push notification. Just download it as it looks great. I will send it along. It's a good idea.
Yeah, we will probably yes. Now that it's in the App Store,
Yeah.
which took a while, we can add more capabilities.
Apple has a lot of hoops to jump through to do something like this, and we did. And hoops jumped, and the app was live. Is there any way to connect a Bluetooth keyboard mouse to two different RPIs? Would like to switch between RPIs rather than remove the pair. And a keyboard switch time, I want to switch between them. Is there anything?
No, not really.
So Bluetooth.
But what you can do is we have in the store we have a USB switcheroo that allows you to plug one device to two different hosts with like a mechanical switch between the two, and you could use a non-Bluetooth wireless keyboard, and that way it would work.
Yeah, if you had a non.
It can't be Bluetooth because you'd switch the USB.
Yeah, if you have a non-Bluetooth keyboard, you can switch that way.
Yeah.
If you were to try to be tricky and have like two like Bluetooth dongles and switch between the two,
No,
I just
because
don't
the
think it would
Bluetooth-
have to
No,
reconnect every
You
time.
can have
Yeah,
BLE and also native BLE. It's just
yeah, I don't
confuse
think it would
out of
ever. I don't think there's
can't-
any way to do that.
You can't do it without using a dongle, a USB
I
dongle.
wonder why there. I wonder if there's something in the Bluetooth spec for like Bluetooth hub switching. Like there's a hub that it would say I have two connected things.
They don't. They
Yeah,
yeah. You guys are freaks. Sorry.
yeah. There's apps like Synergy that got forked at least twice. I can control another computer from the same mouse. Yeah, that's probably as close as you can
Yeah.
get.
That's an app though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see if there's anything else. I think we got to all the questions. That's it.
Okay.
Alrighty, everybody. Thanks so much. We'll see everybody next week on Ask an Engineer. Don't forget, show and tell is Wednesday, 7:30. Ask an Engineer, 8 p.m. This has been an Adafruit production.
Thanks everybody.
Here's your moment, Zena.
Have a great night.